Ken Johnson. I wanted to do, because of the issues I've been having, a special broadcast of sports losers in honor of them. So I wanted to start off with this. This is a memorial of Ken Johnson. On April 23rd, 1964, in Ken Johnson's third start of the season, he took the mound for the Houston Colt 45s against one of his former teams, the Cincinnati Reds, led by Pete Rose. He was nearly flawless that day. With one out on the top of the ninth, the game scoreless, and the Reds yet to have a hit, Johnson fielded a bunt by Pete Rose, but threw the ball away, allowing Rose to reach second base. A ground out moved Rose to third, and with two outs, an error by second baseman Nellie Fox allowed Rose to score. Johnson got the final out, and after the Colt 45s failed to score in the bottom of the inning, became the first pitcher, and at this point the only pitcher in Major League Baseball history to lose despite throwing a complete game, 9-inning no-hitter. I pitched the game of my life and still lost, Johnson would say after the game. A hell of a way to get into the record books. And I agree. Johnson pitched in the majors from 1958 to 1970. He played for 7 different teams, and he compiled a career record of 91 and 106. He died this week, as noted on the caption in the picture there. He is survived by a wife named Lynn, 3 children, 6 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren, and a partridge in a pear tree. The 1972 Philadelphia 76ers. This one seemed timely since the 76ers have started off to such a horrible start in the NBA season. They have hit a similarity when compared to the 1972-73 76ers team that won an NBA low 9 games. These 76ers this year have started 0-15, the same start as the 1972-73 squad. But those 76ers didn't just start 0-15. They were 2-24, 3-38, 4-58 on the way to the worst record in NBA history in an 82-game season. So, what else does it take to get to 9-73 like those 1972-73 76ers? The 72-73 team did have a bigger losing streak than the 15-gamer, one that lasted 20 games and spanned from January 2nd to February 11th. They had some really bad losses in there, including a 4-game stretch within another losing streak in which they lost by 21, 38, 23, and 28 points. So I wanted to throw that in there. The current 76ers, according to ESPN that I got this from, look worse than their counterparts when you extend the look to 4 seasons. The 76ers won 98 games from the 1971-72 season to the 1974-75 season. These 76ers have won 71 wins since the start of the 2012-13 season, meaning they would need to go 27-40 to match that 1970s run. Peyton Manning, quarterback, Denver Broncos. Ladies and gentlemen and sports fans, for the first time in the history of this channel, I would like to introduce a guest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Blc Block Gam3r.
Hey everybody, my name is Blc Block Gam3r.
Yes, I know. I told you that. School of redundancy school, right?
I know.
Anyway, I brought him on here because he gave me technical assistance with this segment. Yes, Peyton Manning. I've included him in this list of sports losers. It hurts me to do so because, as I mentioned before, I am kind of a fan of him. But keep in mind, he tends to have those late season collapses at the end. You know, his teams in the last few years have been one and dones. He has the same number of Super Bowl rings as Trent Dilfer and half the number of Super Bowl rings as Eli Manning. It's stats like that that make you question whether there's a divinity at all. And anyway, he's not going out with the bang that he deserves. He's going out with crutches and neck braces. So the Denver Broncos have announced that they have replaced him.
With Brock Osweiler.
Brock Osweiler, that's right. Thank you.
It's weird.
So anyway, yep, for at least the next 2 weeks, Brock will be starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. So anyway, Blc Block, thank you so much for your help.
You're welcome. I must go. My people need me.
All right. Okay then, so back to normal. I got a couple more things I'd like to go through. So without any more ado, here's our next loser. The 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa launched its franchise at the start of the 1976 season. It wasn't until the 13th week of the following year that the Bucs finally recorded their first win as a team. If you're counting at home, that's an 0-26 mark. That is not the way you want to introduce yourself to a new fan base, ladies and gentlemen. Worse yet, the Buccaneers didn't even manage to score a touchdown until their fourth game of the 1976 season. The lone bright spot in all of that year, where they went 0-14, was the comedic stylings of the head coach, John McKay. Constant losing prompted him to say at one point, I thought all along we would win 14 games. Right after the opening kickoff, I said, well, I'll be damned. He later said, we didn't block real good, but we made up for it by not tackling. And his most famous line, when asked about his offense's execution, he said, I'm in favor of it. So the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 0-14. A mark that was to be equaled and exceeded. The 2008 Detroit Lions. You'll notice I swapped out my jersey for this, for my hometown Lions, who have given me so many sources of pride in my whole life. Yeah. The 2008 Detroit Lions, that was their 79th season in the National Football League. That was also their third season under Rod Marinelli. Me and my friends remember him so fondly. They had gone 7-9 the previous season, and they kind of thought they'd do a little bit better that year. However, they didn't. They lost all 16 of their games. First team since the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers to end the NFL season with no wins or ties, and the first to do it since the schedule expanded to 16 games. The Lions were so bad they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs by week 11 when they were 0-10. They gave up 517 points during the season. That was 16 points away from matching the 1981 Colts record of 533 points allowed. The Lions allowed 32.31 points per game on defense. That's the third worst of any NFL team since the 60s. They were only better than the 66 Giants and the aforementioned 1981 Colts. Team president and CEO Matt Millen, who had been in those roles since 2001, was fired on September 14th, 2008, and Marinelli was fired after the season ended, along with most of his staff. So that was amazing. But I do want to note that for one of the few time, you got to say this when you can, because the Lions don't give you a lot of chance. They are on a 2-game winning streak, and they play tomorrow on Thanksgiving. So, good luck. The Chicago Cubs. No broadcast on Sports Losers would be complete without talking about the Chicago Cubs. They actually had a little bit of success early in their history. In 1906, the Cubs recorded 116 wins. That still stands as the most wins in a season in Major League Baseball history. That was tied by the 2011 or the 2001 Seattle Mariners. The 1906 Cubs posted a winning percentage of 763, and that is a percentage that percentage is the highest percentage that has ever been recorded in baseball history. They appeared in their first World Series that year, but they lost to the White Sox. They then appeared in back-to-back World Series in 1907 and 1908. So they were actually the first team to play in 3 consecutive World Series. They were the first team to win the World Series twice. Since 1908, though, the Cubs have appeared in 7 World Series, and the most recent one of those was in 1945. To give you some context, my dad was not quite 5 years old by the time the 1945 World Series was played. It was in 1945 that the curse happened. Billy Cianis said, "The Cubs, they ain't gonna win no more," after he and his goat were ejected from Game 4 of the 45 series. Sure enough, the Cubs have not won another pennant since that time. Cubs have not won in 107 years at this point. Having once again failed to get to the World Series this year, despite, and this was kind of cool to watch on TV, clinching a postseason series at Wrigley Field for the first time ever. 107 years is the longest championship drought of any major North American professional sports team. And in fact, the drought itself is older than the NFL, NBA, or NHL. I'm going to wrap this up with a few very quick snippets. Think of these as sort of honorable mention losing events. I tried to stay with seasons and things like that. Looking at this, I didn't get into a lot of players. It was Ken Johnson's death this week that actually prompted this video. But very quickly, 1978 Boston Red Sox. Boston went from a 12-game lead over the New York Yankees in July to losing a 1-game tiebreaker to end the season. And then the Yankees went on to win their second World Series in a row. The 1938 Pirates. The Pittsburgh Pirates were a great team in 38 and actually led their division rivals, the Chicago Cubs, by 7 games heading into September. But then the Pirates dropped 13 out of 25, and the Cubs went on a run, forcing the Pirates out of the playoffs. The 1969 Chicago Cubs. In August, Chicago was leading the New York Mets by 9.5 games. By the end of the season, the Cubs were a full 8 games back. And of course, that was the year of the Miracle Mets and their first World Series title. 1951 Brooklyn Dodgers. This was the shot heard around the world. That remains one of the most iconic moments in baseball history. It was also the last moment in an epic Dodgers collapse that began in mid-August when they let a 13.5 game lead over the New York Giants slip away. Here are the Cubs again. 2003 Chicago Cubs. Chicago was up 3-1 on the Florida Marlins in the National League Championship Series. They were ready to go to the first World Series since 1945, remember? Led by Mark Pryor, Kerry Wood, and Carlos Zambrano, they were an awesome team. I do remember that lineup. But the Cubs let Game 5 go, and then Game 6, the Steve Bartman incident. I agree that it's kind of unfair to blame him entirely, but whatever, that is what it is. They lost that game, then they lost Game 7. The Marlins went to the World Series, and that was it. The 2010 Boston Bruins. The Bruins hold the incredibly dubious honor of blowing a 3-0 lead in the National Hockey League Conference semifinals to the Philadelphia Flyers. That's nearly impossible to do, but it has been done, and they lost 4-3 that year. The Houston Oilers 1992 AFC wildcard game. I had to get this one in here. Houston's collapse was one of the worst in NFL history. They were up 35-3 in the third quarter. The Buffalo Bills fans were leaving the stadium, but the Oilers couldn't hold on, and Buffalo ended up winning that game and going to the Super Bowl. Now, one final one. I wanted to throw this in here. I don't think it's important from a historical perspective, but it's my personal favorite. The 1986-1987 Norris Division Final. The Detroit Red Wings came back from a 3-1 deficit to the Toronto Maple Leafs, won that series 4-3, and went to the Campbell Conference Finals, where they got spanked by the Edmonton Oilers. But that Norris Division Final series, that still remains in my head as epic. Anyway, I don't want to get into the issues I have mentioned to at the beginning of the video that have kept me from kind of getting a video out before. And I wanted to do something that got away from just reporting stuff, because frankly, I can talk about Clemson being number 1, Notre Dame falling out of the top 4. Yay, Diana Fire. Michigan won. They're up to 10. Great. But you know all that. You can turn ESPN on and see all that. You can look at the apps on your phone and get all that. So I thought it would be more interesting and a real good fun change of pace to do something a little bit more along these lines. So if there's a topic that you'd like me to get to and address, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. With that, peace out. Thanks a lot, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Go Lions.